This is the fourth and final part in a series where I look over the procedurally generated arc system. In this one, I'm going to go over my thoughts on the system, what I liked, what I didn't like, and what they could have done to have made it better. You can watch the previous ones if you like, but again, they're not entirely necessary. With that out of the way, let's just go ahead and get into it. Now, while I don't claim to be an expert in the system, I think I might be one of the more knowledgeable people about it because I'm one of the few people that knows that it even exists or tried to make anything with it. First, I made a default world and explored that pretty thoroughly. Then I made 5 of the presets that the game automatically has saved. And then I tried to make my own world, and I went through 7 or 8 procedurally generated arcs before I gave up. When I generated my first world, I was wowed, just like I think anybody else would have been.
Whoa. Okay, this is kind of cool.
Looking around, things seemed to be spawning fine. The biomes were there, the correct creatures were in the biomes. And I was just thinking, man, this is going to be just like when I explored the island, because we all remember that fondly. There were a couple things that I noticed that kind of stood out as bad to me. The first is that certain parts of the terrain just looked like they'd been bombed out, and that was an incredible eyesore, and also it actually made it tough to run along the surface because you would just get caught on this weird piece of ground sticking up for no reason at all. Another eyesore I noticed was some of the biome transitions. So in a normal map, when you go from snow to jungle, it kind of slowly transitions. You see a couple patches of snow and stuff like that. But on this generated world, it was just snow and then jungle, and there was just a straight line separating the two. Overall, though, the system was exciting. Really, that's the only word I had to describe all the possibilities I had in my head, and I could not wait to try out the presets. The first one I started up was called Drake's World. And Drake's World felt a lot like the default one, except maybe slightly better. Some of the hills were better curved so that you could walk up them. The terrain felt a little less fucked up, and some of the creatures just seemed to spawn more naturally. Overall, it just felt like a maybe 10% better version of the default world. The next preset was called Bronto Island, and you will not hear me say a nice thing about this. First off, the name, I found fucking 1 Bronto across the entire map, and I was flying around in admin mode, so I couldn't have missed all that many. Second, the terrain was just messed up. The default world had it pretty bad, but Bronto Island had it worse. And third, it just didn't feel cool. There was nothing special about it. It was just like a default world with a misleading name and more messed up terrain. Overall, I really was not happy with this one at all. Next one was called Redwoods, and as far as names go, that one's a pretty good one. The whole map was just fucking redwoods. It was cool because it was the specific type of redwoods biome that I seem to only find on procedurally generated arcs, where all the trees are super close together, which is different from like the island, for example, and I find that to be a lot cooler. But as far as maps go, it is just a gimmick. You wouldn't want to play on this for long, but if they opened up a couple official servers like this, a couple of Apocalypse servers that are just this map, I would definitely try it, at least for 1 week or so, and see how I feel from there. But this reinvigorated me, especially after the disappointment that was Bronto Island. Next one was called Sandy Shores, and it was basically just a default world, except it had bigger beaches. This was an improvement because the normal beaches are too small, but that's such a tiny and irrelevant part of the map that really there's not all that much to say about this one. An improvement, but in a very minor way. The next and final one I looked at was called Many Islands, and the name is also pretty descriptive on this one. Instead of one big island where everything's connected, there was just 10 to 12 shitty little islands. This would have been a very cool playstyle to have on official servers, and I lamented at the fact that there was nothing quite like this. Overall, it was just a very cool idea that I wished was a thing. With all the presets now looked through, my excitement waned a little. Of course, there was a couple bad apples, specifically Bronto Island really burned me on how fucking lame it was. But now that I understood what the system was capable of and what you could do with it, and more specifically what I wanted to create out of a map, It was time to move on to the main course, which was really the whole thing the system was built for, creating your own custom world. And this is where the system really fucking fell into pieces. This is where I grew to resent it. It had absolutely no margin of error for when creating a world. Of the 7 worlds that I created, exactly 0 of them are fucking playable. Now what happens? Well, you misplace a 1, you misplace a 0, you put a period somewhere you shouldn't have, or you take away a negative sign, and the whole world is literally unplayable. Don't believe me? Let's run through all the worlds I made. World number 1. I think I messed something up with the height of the world and mountain settings, so now there are no trees or rocks unless you are on the beach. There's not even any redwoods trees. You know, the big ones you can build on? They're gone too. World number 2. The water's inverted. Yeah, I did just say that, and it is true. Instead of the water going down to the bottom of the world, the water goes up to the top of the world. So everything below a certain point is dry land, everything above a certain point is in the water. And you can't even tell it. You just invisibly walk into water. This one was real fucking weird. World number 3. Just a boring old world, but the mountains were real steep, and they were so steep that they spawned no metal at all. World number 4. I might be stretching it by calling this not playable, but the majority of the map was both redwoods and snow. You could survive there, but good luck not getting fucking eaten by a car now. World number 5. I probably messed something up with the mountain settings here and made them a little too steep. They're just very jagged spikes sticking out of the floor now. And you could probably guess they don't spawn any metal either. World number 6, and I accidentally made it look like the surface of the moon. It's just craters and hills, and a lot of the hills you can't get up because they're covered in this really weird, messed up terrain. So you're just stuck at the bottom of a pit. World number 7. I don't even know how I did this. You spawn outside of the fucking world border, but you can't even move either, so you're just kind of trapped in like 2 layers of the world border. Now, you might think I'm being a little overdramatic. So what if I messed up a couple worlds? Just exit that and create a new one. Well, here's the problem. Every time you make a world, it takes fucking forever to generate. You are stuck looking at this black screen for 10 to 20 minutes while a world starts up. Just to find out that because you put a 1 somewhere you shouldn't have, all that time was wasted and you're going to have to do it again, and hopefully you get it right this time. I mean, spoiler alert, you never get it right. A lot of the settings just don't make sense. Can you guess what turbulence setting means? Can you guess what deposition strength means? Can you guess what landscape radius means? It's all nonsense to me, and that's the problem. The system, like most of Ark, has no explanation. But, unlike the majority of Ark, there is no fun in finding out the system because most of your time is literally spent looking at a black screen waiting for a world to load up. If I had to describe the system in one word, it would be abandoned. What I feel like we have now is an early beta that they just give out to everybody and we can all test it, and then they take our feedback and they improve it, tweak it, upgrade it, whatever they have to do to make the system better. This would allow them to QA test it with more people and for free, and we get the system earlier, so it's a win-win for everybody. But I feel like they just forgot about the system, or whoever was in charge of running it got fired and they're like, fuck it, don't care, this thing doesn't matter anymore. The best example of this is the fact that there's exactly 0 official servers and that 0 updates have been made to the system since it has come out. And the part that makes a system like this being abandoned is the potential it has. Imagine, if you will, an Apocalypse server that every time it wipes, it's just a new map. You assign someone. Every 30 days, someone from Wildcard has to design a new map using the system. So they make a template using the procedure generate arc, and then they smooth out the edges and fix the spawns. And every 30 days you have a map that's not quite up to traditional map spec, but it's a hell of a lot better than what we have now. Wouldn't that just be the greatest thing ever? You guys remember the first time you explored the island? The first time you found a metal rock, an obsidian rock, coming across a cave for the first time, not knowing what's inside, getting killed? You know what all those things have in common? It's a sense of exploration. And while a lot of those things can't be replicated more than once, we can certainly try and get something that's at least close to that. And that, I think, is the main thing that procedurally generated arcs need to become. They really need to have a sense of exploration, and right now that is completely missing because the terrain just feels incredibly bland and boring and really just fucked up and a complete eyesore. There are also a definite number of quality of life and just general improvements that need to be made. The first is obviously just the messed up terrain. It's an eyesore, it's hard to move around, and you can't build in it. Foundations just won't place there because of the messed up terrain. That, to me, is the biggest issue. There's also no swamp biome, which I find to be not a good thing. Of course, a lot of people hate the swamp biome, and it's tough, but that's part of the fun, right? You want to get to the redwoods on foot, you gotta cross this fucking terrible swamp. You can't just have an easy game. Not everything's gonna be level 1. There's meant to be challenge, and in the PG arcs you cannot get any swamp to spawn. And that of course makes taming swamp creatures incredibly difficult. The other thing that desperately needs to be worked on is how difficult it is to create your own world. Now, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I also like to think that maybe I'm not the dumbest either, and I simply could not get a world going. Every time I messed up, it'd be 15 minutes down the drain. I'd love for them to improve speed, but I'm sure they can't. I'm sure it's as fast as they can. But what they could do is give you a little heads up if something's going to go wrong. So, what it could do is be like, if you have the settings like they are now, the water will be flipped, which would have been a nice thing to know. Or just something as simple as a little question box next to every setting, so I can press the question box in a turbulence setting and actually fucking know what that does. Aside from fixing and updating what's already there, I feel like PG arcs need to add 3 things. Now, as a PvP player, I'm perfectly fine with just squabbling over rocks and dirt. But PvE players and single players, well, they like to actually get shit done and defeat bosses. So one of the things you need is you 100% need obelisks. It was very weird to play on an arc map that had 0 obelisks. The second, to complement that, is of course you're going to need caves. And these are going to have to randomly generate across the world. Other games have done this, and it doesn't seem like it'd be impossible, but again, I don't know the code for Ark. And the third, I would like to see a random amount of landmarks spawning on a map. So what I'm thinking is you could have 20, 30 landmarks that you have as possible to spawn on the map, and then 3 of those are randomly selected from the bag and would appear. A good example of something like this would be the center pillar on the island. You guys know where it is, you know what's on it, you know why it's used. Having landmarks like that would be cool. It could be a small little lake, a cool river, a particularly jagged cliff, just something that's interesting. And that's about all I have to say for the system. Lots of potential, but unfortunately it's just squandered through them abandoning it. Hopefully we have something like this, but improved in Arc 2. Either way, please do leave a like, subscribe if you guys enjoyed. And thank you for bearing with me through this. It's a little bit different than what I usually do, but I hope you guys enjoyed it nonetheless. And Arc Apocalypse video is coming soon. That wipe should be pretty interesting. Either way, I'll see you guys later.